When I had a stroke at 60, the entire structure of my family changed overnight. Their indifference cut through me like a cold wind. My name is Linda Whitmore. I lived in a small suburban house on the outskirts of San Francisco, California. That morning, I woke up just like any other day, heading to the kitchen for a cup of coffee. I had barely wrapped my fingers around the mug when it slipped from my trembling hand and shattered on the floor. I was paralyzed. The entire left side of my body had gone numb. I couldn't move. My mouth drooped awkwardly, and my words came out slurred and broken. Drool slid down my chin as I screamed silently, over and over in my head. "Help me! Somebody help me!" But no one heard. Luckily, my husband, Donald, was home at the time. He came running in when he heard the crash and found me collapsed on the floor. He immediately woke up our daughter Amanda and called 911 while fumbling for his phone. An ambulance rushed me to United Hospital in the San Francisco Bay Area. Amanda sat beside me, her face tense with worry. My son, Julian, arrived a few hours later. I had foolishly thought this illness might bring them closer, even temporarily. But the moment the doctor left the room, they started to argue. The doctor explained it was a mild stroke, caught early, and with the right care and rehabilitation, I had a good chance of a partial recovery. The key, he stressed, was that I would need my family's support during my stay. I felt a glimmer of relief. Recovery was possible. I had some savings, insurance would cover most of the costs, and I wouldn't be too much of a burden. How naive I was. Before the echo of the diagnosis faded, Donald stood up, adjusting his jacket as he spoke. "I promised Ruby I'd rehearse with her this week for the August showcase. I'll be staying at her place to practice. You kids better step up and do your part." The way he said "you kids," as if he wasn't part of the family, hurt more than the stroke itself. Without even looking at me, he left. Amanda rolled her eyes and snapped. "It's always me taking care of Mom. Now, it's your turn." Julian shot back instantly. "And how much has she done for you?" "Free rent, watching your kids, paying your bills. Don't pretend you're doing her a favor." Amanda scoffed, unfazed. "Oh, listen to how bad she's been to you. Who helped you get that car? Who gave you the down payment on your house? You're her son too, Julian. Or did you forget you owe her just as much?" They argued like enemies, trading accusations in front of my hospital bed, fighting not for me, but over who was more used by me. I couldn't hold back the tears. They knew how much I had given each of them. Yet neither was willing to give anything back. And then, it happened. A sour smell washed over my body. I had lost control of my bladder. The argument died instantly. The air grew thick with a heavy, unbearable silence. I tried to lift my hand to cover my face, to hide my shame, but my arm wouldn't move. I could only sob helplessly, my eyes fixed on them, silently pleading for help. Julian looked away, grimacing. He stood up abruptly. "I have to prep for a meeting. Sorry, I have to go," he muttered. Without another word, he hurried out of the room. Amanda, furious, yelled after him, "You coward! All you ever do is run away." Then she turned to me, forcing a fragile smile. "Don't worry, Mom, I'll make sure he comes back." But she too turned on her heel and left. The door clicked shut behind her. And just like that, the world went silent. I lay alone in that hospital bed, the dampness beneath me, the hollow silence of the hallway, and the numbing cold that had settled deep in my bones, all swallowing me whole, like a frozen lake in the dead of winter. Ah, I tried to scream, but with my mouth twisted, I couldn't form a word. I could only watch helplessly as they walked out, one by one. My pants were soaked. I lay there, motionless, like an abandoned piece of furniture no one wanted to claim. Everyone in the room, the other patients, their families had witnessed the disaster of my family's crisis. No one said a word, but their looks, heavy with pity, cut deeper than any verbal judgment. I had never felt so ashamed, so humiliated, so utterly alone. Finally, a caregiver from the next bed couldn't stand it anymore. She let out a soft sigh, came over to me, and without any disgust, gently helped me into dry clothes. She even rummaged through her bag and pulled out an extra cotton towel, placing it carefully under my head. "There you go, honey. "Now your pillow won't get wet," she murmured, her voice as soft and warm as a San Francisco evening breeze. My vision blurred with tears. Gratitude washed over me so intensely I couldn't speak. I could only lock my eyes on hers, desperately hoping she could feel my silent thanks. Just as she finished arranging the sheets, Amanda reappeared. Julian was nowhere in sight. Amanda walked in with a bright, relaxed smile, as if she'd just finished a workout. She flopped down beside my bed and said in a cheerful voice, "Mom, I thought about it, and I decided it's better for me to take care of you. See? I'm so much more considerate than my brother, right?" It sounded sweet enough on the surface, but even as she spoke, she was already pulling her phone out of her purse, her fingers flying across the screen. The nurse had instructed her to help me change positions regularly. Amanda nodded obediently, but as soon as the nurse was gone, she was back to scrolling through Instagram and watching TikToks. She put an adult diaper on me, but would often only change it once a day. My skin began to itch, especially on my lower half, an unbearable and persistent itch, like fire ants were crawling on me. But I didn't even have the strength to scratch. I could only blink desperately at the kind caregiver across the room, praying with all my might that she would notice and come to my rescue. It wasn't because I couldn't afford better care. I had savings tucked away in my retirement fund. Medicare would have covered part of it. I could have easily hired a full-time private caregiver. But Amanda dismissed the idea. "Mom, do you know how much a private nurse costs?" she scoffed. "Besides, no one will take better care of you than your own daughter." If she really cared, I wouldn't be lying there, itching so badly I thought I would lose my mind. Later, the doctor called Amanda outside. By then, I was recovering, though painfully slowly. My mouth had started to straighten out a bit, and I could manage a few broken words if I tried hard enough. Amanda came back into the room minutes later, her face a mask of fury. She stormed over to my bed and said, "Mom, we're leaving." My eyes widened in disbelief. "You're not going to get any better here," she said, as if explaining to a child. "Strokes leave all sorts of permanent damage. It's better to just go home and recover naturally. I'll take good care of you, I promise." The doctor followed her in, trying to intervene. "Mrs. Whitmore is making progress," he said firmly. "With continued rehabilitation, there's a strong chance she can regain much of her independence. Going home now would undo everything we've achieved so far." Amanda exploded. She screamed at him, "You just want to bleed us dry. My mom has only been here a little over a week, and the bill is already over $13,000. Are we supposed to sell the house just to pay for this?" It was crystal clear she didn't want to spend another dime, even though it was my money, not hers. And because she was my next of kin and had power of attorney, she had the legal right to check me out. And she did. I gathered all the energy I had left and forced out a few broken words. "I want to stay." But she didn't even look at me. It was as if I hadn't said a thing. Soon, Amanda brought me back home. The room was exactly as I had left it, but the moment she left me there, any pretense of care vanished. Her so-called care consisted of bringing me 2 meals a day, one in the morning and one at night. Lunch? She was at work, not her problem. Changing my adult diaper depended on her mood. Cleaning me, turning me to prevent bed sores, those things never happened. There was no clock on the wall, no drawn curtains. After a while, I couldn't even tell if it was day or night. I began to feel like I was rotting, silently and invisibly, forgotten by this house, abandoned by the world. Until one day, a pair of small, soft hands gripped my wrist. Grandma. It was Caleb, Amanda's youngest, my 4-year-old grandson, the boy I had raised with my own 2 hands. "Grandma, why don't you play with Caleb anymore?" He tilted his head, his voice sweet and high-pitched, so much like Amanda's when she was little. I forced a smile and reached out, trembling, trying to stroke his face. "Grandma, Mommy said that when you die, I can have this room for my toys." "Grandma, what does die mean?" My hand, extended to touch him, fell helplessly in midair. My entire body began to shake uncontrollably. Caleb was the spitting image of Amanda at that age, soft cheeks, big eyes, and that sing-song baby voice calling me Mommy over and over. And now, that same little girl was waiting for me to die, tearing my life apart before I was even gone. I fought to keep my composure, but the grief completely overwhelmed me. Caleb must have sensed something. He turned and ran from the room, frightened. The silence fell around me again like a closing tomb. That night, Amanda hauled me up, half dragging, half pushing, and fed me dinner with a brittle, fake smile plastered on her face. "Mom, where do you keep the bank statements?" "The deed to the house, you know, and all that?" I choked on a bite of food. Tears sprang to my eyes, but Amanda didn't even flinch. She didn't care if I lived or died, only what I might leave behind. I said nothing. I just stared at her, cold and hard. She didn't seem bothered. Instead, she turned and started rummaging through my room like she was picking through a thrift store. She threw open the closet, tossing my neatly folded clothes around the room like trash. "Seriously, Mom? You were hiding a bracelet like it's some kind of treasure?" she scoffed. "This junk isn't worth anything anymore," she muttered to herself, yanking open the small cloth bag I had hidden deep inside the headboard. When she found only an old silver bangle inside, she smirked in disappointment and tossed it aside. It clattered to the floor. I watched it roll across the room, the bracelet my mother had given me, the last thing I had left of her, Amanda's great-grandmother. I had never let anyone touch it, not once. Somehow, from the deepest part of me, strength surged. My right hand clenched into a fist so tight I felt like I could crush the very air. The room was filled with dust. No one had cleaned it in ages. I started coughing violently, a thick phlegm clogging my throat like a dead snake I couldn't dislodge. Amanda wrinkled her nose and took a step back. "God, Mom, could you be any more disgusting?" I finally managed to cough up the mucus, gasping for air so hard it sounded like an old bellows. Amanda said nothing. She kept rummaging through drawers and cabinets until the room looked like it had been hit by a hurricane. Finally, she slammed the door and stormed out. I sat there, breathless, surrounded by scattered clothes, the silver bracelet just out of my reach. I tried to pull myself up, but I lost my balance and fell to the floor. My left side was a dead weight. My right hand clutched the bracelet to my chest like it was the last patch of pure earth on a ruined battlefield. From the living room, I heard muffled voices. Amanda was on the phone, her tone casual, almost cheerful. "Julian, Mom's pretty much gone. It's just a matter of time. We'll be free soon." She laughed lightly. "Dad's too busy dancing with that old hag to care about her." Sweat dripped from my hairline onto the hardwood floor, leaving dark marks. I propped my right hand on the doorframe, my face pressed to the floor, holding my breath so I wouldn't sob. The tears spilled out anyway. "She's probably crying for sure," Amanda said lazily into the phone. "Let her. There's nothing else she can do anymore." And in that moment, my heart finally broke. It didn't just crack, it shattered into pieces so small I knew it could never be whole again. I lay there all night, motionless, as my mind drifted through the past 60 years of my life. I tried to pinpoint what terrible sin I had committed to end up like this. But no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't find a single offense. All I could remember was being the woman who gave up her career for her children, the woman who swallowed her pride for the sake of the family, the woman who jumped into the fire the moment someone cried, "Mom." At dawn, Amanda finally noticed I was still lying on the floor. She dragged me back to bed, muttering under her breath, "Mom, what are you doing down there? So gross." She shoved a peeled, hard-boiled egg into my mouth and immediately went back to her old routine. "Mom, seriously, where did you put the deed to the house?" I ignored her. She got irritated. "Look, it's not like it matters. Sooner or later, this will all be Julian's and mine anyway. Why don't you just hand it over?" Still, I said nothing. She rolled her eyes, slammed the door, and left. After she was gone, I spent a long time reaching under the bed, pulling out the spare cell phone I had hidden there. With shaking hands, I inserted the battery and dialed my husband's number. "Linda, I'm at rehearsal," he snapped. "Call Amanda or Julian, will you?" Before he hung up, I heard a woman's laughter echoing in the background. Helplessly, I dialed another number. "Diane, come get me at noon. Take me to the hospital." As the words left my mouth, I exhaled in a long, shaky breath. Diane Harris had been my best friend for decades. We were each other's emergency contact, the kind of friends who had keys to each other's houses. She once told me, "Linda, if you ever stop answering your phone, I'm kicking your door down." And she meant it. That day, without asking any questions, she got in her car with her son and drove straight over. She took me back to United Hospital in San Francisco. "Honey, what happened to you?" Diane asked, standing by my emergency room bed, her eyes already red. Finally, someone who wanted to hear me speak, someone who actually cared. Word by word, I told her everything, the humiliation, the fear, the cold betrayal. Diane sat beside me, her hand resting on my shoulder, tears streaming down her face as she listened. Before I could finish, calls from Amanda and Julian started coming in. I waved them away and motioned for Diane to answer for me. "Mom, where are you?" Amanda demanded through the line. "Do you know I had to come back from work and look all over the house for you? Could you just not be so difficult?" Diane raised an eyebrow and pulled the phone away from her ear. Her voice was sharp enough to cut glass. "I'm the one who brought your mother to the hospital. You got a problem with that?" Diane's temper was legendary in our neighborhood. Her voice alone could make grown men shrink. On the other end of the line, Amanda went completely silent. After a few seconds, she tried again, this time more softly. "Mom's illness has no cure. Keeping her hospitalized is a waste of money. I was thinking maybe." "That's none of your business," Diane snapped. "From now on, I'll be handling everything concerning your mother." And with that, she hung up without another word. She patted my hand. "Don't you worry, Linda. I'm not going anywhere." I nodded and insisted she help me hire a full-time private caregiver. She did, finding me a wonderful Mexican lady, neat and efficient, with kind hands and a voice like warm honey. I never expected it, but those days in the hospital turned out to be the most peaceful and joyful period of my life in years. My children didn't visit once, and strangely, I didn't miss them at all. Every day, Diane brought me little treats I loved: fresh raisin muffins, warm creamy chicken soup, homemade butterscotch pudding. We spent hours chatting on the small corner balcony of my hospital room, sometimes laughing so hard the nurses would wander over just to join in. I even had the caregiver help me buy a new smartphone. One afternoon, I treated myself and ordered a fresh fruit basket and a bouquet of flowers. When Diane opened the bags, her jaw dropped. "Are you crazy, Linda? You finally lost it. It took you 60 years, but you finally learned how to spoil yourself." I laughed. For so long I had saved every penny, scrimping, saving, always saving for my children. Looking back now, how foolish I had been. They were never worth it. As the stress melted away, my spirits lifted, and my body began to heal faster than anyone expected. Even the doctors marveled during their rounds. "Regaining 90% of function after a stroke? That's practically unheard of," one said, shaking his head in amazement. A few weeks later, I was discharged from the hospital. Standing at my front door, I felt nothing. No warmth, no relief. The house was empty. No one had come to pick me up. Inside, the bedroom had been rearranged. Children's toys were scattered everywhere. With just one look, I knew Amanda had been busy while I was away. I wasn't angry. I simply collected everything that didn't belong to me and piled it in the center of the living room. That evening, Amanda finally came home. Seeing me, she froze for a second, then broke into a radiant smile and pushed a grocery bag into my hands. "Mom, you're back. I was dying for your roasted chicken." I used to cook for her every night when she came back. I felt sorry for her, seeing her tired after work. I'd handle her meals, raise her son, and even do her laundry without a second thought. But not this time. I threw the grocery bag back into her arms. "You think I owe you something? Don't you have hands to cook your own meals?" It was probably the first time I had ever really raised my voice to her. She blinked, stunned, then pouted and stomped off to the kitchen. A few minutes later, I heard loud, deliberate chopping sounds meant for my ears, no doubt. I flipped through the channels, barely looking up. I called out nonchalantly, "Don't ruin my wooden cutting board. That thing's been with me for over 20 years. There was a brief silence. Then, "Oh no." Amanda came running out, holding up a bleeding finger. "Mom, I hurt myself," she cried, waving her hand dramatically, expecting me to drop everything and fuss over her. I barely glanced up. I just adjusted the remotes on the coffee table and said, "Deal with it yourself. I'm not a doctor." I saw my cutting board, split into 3 pieces, and my kitchen knife, now with a chipped edge. I sighed, but not for her little cut. I mourned the loss of my old, faithful tools. Those things had been a part of my life for decades. Amanda bandaged her minor wound and kept parading her finger in front of me, fishing for sympathy. She thought I would melt. I just looked at her and let out a dry, joyless laugh. Did she really think I owed her anything? Mom, she ventured, a little hesitantly. You've changed. Ever since you came back from the hospital. I smiled faintly. I figured something out. She blinked, curious. What? In this world, I said, looking her straight in the eye, my gaze piercing. You can't rely on anyone. The only person you can count on is yourself. She flinched, looking away, unable to meet my gaze. But the longer I looked at her, the more disgusted I felt. You should find another place to live, I said calmly. She stared at me, as if she hadn't heard right. Amanda owned a small one-bedroom apartment in the city. She wasn't homeless. She once claimed she moved back to keep me company. The truth was, she just wanted free room and board. Mom, are you kicking me out? I'm your daughter, she shrieked. Then she grabbed Caleb and pushed him into my arms. Mom, are you really going to send your little angel away too? Caleb, go hug Grandma. Caleb snuggled against me and said softly, Grandma, please, and my heart softened for a second. Amanda thought she had won. A smile was just beginning to form on her lips when I spoke again. If you don't move out, I'm calling a moving company for you. The smile died instantly. Desperate, she tried to push Caleb at me again, hoping guilt would make me change my mind. I'll admit, my heart was never made of stone, but I had finally learned. I would never again allow my kindness to be used as a weapon against me. I stared her down, my voice colder. Amanda, tell me, what exactly do I owe you? She blinked rapidly, putting on a fake pout. Mom, how can you say that? I didn't rush. I spoke slowly, each word crisp and clear. Caleb is your son. You should be taking care of him. I helped you out of love, not obligation. As of today, I'm no longer your babysitter. I stopped cooking for them. I only made simple meals for myself, the food I liked. With no one else to cater to, I felt lighter and freer than I had in decades. I always thought living alone would be difficult. It wasn't. Amanda tried to patch things up several times. She would push Caleb on me, hoping I'd give in. I didn't. I just turned up the volume on the television. After a few days, she was at her breaking point. One evening, she stood in the kitchen doorway, fuming, as Caleb tugged at her hand. She pointed at the table in disgust. Mom, you won't babysit. Fine. But could you at least make something edible? This bland crap. Who's supposed to eat this? I looked up at her. The doctor told me to stick to a light diet. I'm just following instructions. If you want something else, make it yourself. I took another sip of my warm broth and added, By the way, when exactly are you moving out? She inhaled sharply, trying to compose herself. Mom, this is your house, and it's my house too. I'm not leaving. She switched tactics, pulling the pity card. You're my mother. If you don't help me, no one will. There was a time those words would have broken my heart. Not anymore. I pulled out my phone, called a moving company, booked the service, paid for it, and requested a rush job, all in one swift motion. Not long after, 2 movers showed up at the door. Amanda panicked and rushed to block their path. All this stuff is mine. Who gave you permission to touch it? The movers hesitated, unsure what to do. I calmly opened a drawer, pulled out the property deed, and waved it in the air. The house is mine. She's just a temporary resident. I'm asking her to leave. It's a rush order. I'll give you an extra $50 tip. The movers got to work immediately. Amanda grabbed Caleb and screamed, Mom, are you insane? You're kicking me out? I'm your daughter. I turned my back on her without a word. No matter how hard she pounded on the door, no matter how loudly she cried and screamed, I didn't answer. After Amanda and Caleb left, the house was finally quiet. I sat on the sofa, watching the sunlight stream through the balcony windows, feeling a strange sense of disorientation. It was the first time in decades I had carved out a life entirely for myself. For the first time, I could ask myself a real question. What do I want to do? And the answer was a lot. I opened my laptop and browsed the San Francisco Community College website. Enrollment, payment, course selection. I did it all in one sitting. I wasn't worried about graduating. I just wanted to reclaim a dream I had abandoned long ago. Learning wasn't easy at first, my brain was slower, and my eyes tired easily, but I had never felt so alive. One afternoon after class, I was walking home slowly. As I turned onto my street, I saw Julian standing at the door. I had changed the locks a long time ago. Julian fumbled with his old, useless key, trying again and again to get in. I walked up, opened the door with my new key, and let him inside. As soon as he was in, his gaze locked on the backpack slung over my shoulder. He rummaged through it and pulled out a stack of registration papers. "Mom, you're enrolling in community college?" he asked, disbelief in his voice. I nodded. He frowned, as if I were a problem child. "Mom, you're not exactly young anymore. Wouldn't it be more sensible to just stay home, watch your grandkids, and do some housework? Why spend money on things like this?" He paused, then added, "Amanda told me you're acting like a rebellious teenager. I didn't believe her at first, but you really did it. Mom, why don't you just move in with us? You can cook and help out. It would make more sense." He said it like it was the most natural thing in the world, as if my sole purpose in life was to serve them. I couldn't help but laugh, loud and cold. "Do I owe you something?" I retorted. I snatched my registration papers from his hands. "I'm spending my own money. How is that any of your business? Who are you to tell me what I can and can't do?" Julian's face darkened. He muttered under his breath, "I'm just worried you'll get scammed. I'm your son. If I don't look out for you, who will?" I stared at him, my voice turning to ice. Where was that concern when I was lying in a hospital bed? The words hung between us like nails hammered into the air. Julian lowered his head and said nothing. I didn't know what he was trying to achieve, and I didn't care. Maybe I really was going through a late-life rebellion. But God, it felt good. Living alone, doing what I wanted, when I wanted. Why had I spent so many years being their servant? Julian kept rambling in the living room, nagging and lecturing. I nodded distractedly, pretending to listen, but I didn't register a single word. When he realized he could no longer guilt or bully me, he finally left, muttering angrily under his breath. The door clicked shut behind him. And in that moment, I felt lighter than air, like a lobster finally free from its old, cracked shell. I was enjoying my life at home so much that when Donald suddenly showed up at the door, I didn't even react at first. "Hey, old woman." "I'm back," he yelled from across the room, dragging a huge bag and dropping it at my feet. I glanced down. The bag was full of dirty laundry that stank of stale sweat. I wrinkled my nose in disgust, picked up the bag without a word, and tossed it right back at him. "Wash it yourself. Don't expect me to do everything for you." He stared at me, wide-eyed, like he was seeing a complete stranger. After a few seconds of stunned silence, he scowled and kicked the bag back at me. "You're my wife. If you don't wash my clothes, what good are you?" I didn't bother to answer. I just calmly turned around and shut the door to my room in his face. We had been sleeping in separate rooms for years, ever since the kids grew up. In hindsight, maybe it was a blessing I didn't have to see his perpetually sour face every day. I went back to my desk, pulled out my thick textbook, and started reading. From behind the door, Donald's voice droned on and on. "Linda, where's dinner?" "Linda, I'm out of my medicine. Get me some more." "Linda, where's my Latin dance outfit?" I gripped my pen tightly, forcing myself not to roll my eyes so hard they popped out of my skull. Was this man crippled? Could he not put on his own socks without me? It was almost absurd. For years I lived like this, believing it was normal. Now, seeing it with fresh eyes, it made my skin crawl. Sighing, I finally went to the kitchen and made a simple dinner. Of course, the moment he took one bite, the complaints started. "What is this garbage? It tastes awful. Why can't you learn from Ruby? Her food is 100 times better than yours." Ruby, his beloved dance partner. She was around his age and had been widowed for about 7 years. She was a professional dance teacher and now taught classes for seniors at the local community center. Donald had gotten addicted to dancing because of her. He had tried to drag me along too, but my back problems made it impossible. After that, it was like a switch had been flipped. In his eyes, I couldn't do anything right anymore. I didn't dress as nicely as Ruby. I didn't cook as well. I didn't have the same grace. And of course, I couldn't dance. He constantly nagged me, using every conversation to tear me down a little more. I ate the last bite of my meal in silence, washed my own dishes, and then, right in front of him, I dumped his half-eaten dinner straight into the trash. I wiped my plate, cleaned the table, and without so much as a look back, I headed to my room. Behind me, I heard him roar in outrage. "Have you lost your mind?" I wasn't done eating, but no matter how loud he yelled, how furiously he barked orders, I didn't even give him a glance. Not anymore. Donald wasn't the type to give up easily. He dug in his heels and played dirty, letting dirty laundry pile up, dishes stack in the sink, letting the whole house reek of rotting food. He thought if he waited long enough, I'd give in and clean it all up like I always did. But this time, all the plates were dirty. All the pots were caked with grime. The kitchen smelled like a garbage dump. And still, I didn't move. After a few days, when there wasn't a single clean dish left in the house, Donald sauntered to the kitchen door, arms crossed over his chest, smirking. "See? I told you. You always come crawling back," he said, shaking his head and flashing that self-satisfied grin. "Linda, you should take a page from Ruby's book. Now that's a woman who knows how to treat a man." I let out a sharp, humorless laugh, grabbed a handful of utensils, and threw them loudly into the sink. "If Ruby is so wonderful," I said coldly, "why don't you go live with her?" Our marriage had been arranged by our parents. Before the wedding, Donald and I had only met a handful of times, barely enough to learn each other's favorite colors, let alone forge a future. And still, we were pushed down the aisle together, expected to make it work. The sweetness, the bitterness, the countless heartaches, I swallowed them all by myself. No one had ever asked me, "Do you want this?" They only told me, "This is what you should do." For 40 years, in Donald's eyes, I had never been enough, not pretty enough, not smart enough, not good enough. In the past, I swallowed my pride and told myself to endure it. But not this time. Donald's face contorted with rage. His voice rose, sharp and ugly. "If I didn't pity you, I would have been with someone else years ago. Do you think anyone else would want you? You're ugly and stupid. Divorce." The word hit my mind like a lightning bolt. I had never seriously considered it. I didn't even dare whisper it to myself. Growing up, my parents had drilled lesson after lesson into me. Get a job early, so you're not a burden. So I skipped college and joined the workforce. This man is a good match. Marry him. So I married Donald. A woman's job is to serve her husband and children. Family is your whole life. So I lived for them, and never for myself. It took 40 years before I realized it. I had never once made a decision purely for myself. A wave of unstoppable energy surged through me. "Fine," I said, the words tumbling out before I could think. "Let's get a divorce." Donald scoffed, thinking I was just throwing another pointless tantrum. "Linda, stop being ridiculous. As long as you behave yourself, I'm not going anywhere." He said it like he was doing me a favor, as if I couldn't survive without him. I stood up slowly, looked him dead in the eye, and pronounced each word clearly. "Donald Whitmore, I want a divorce." I saw his jaw drop in shock, and deep in my chest, I felt it a breeze seeping through the cracked open doors of a prison I had built around myself for half a lifetime. Donald, furious, stormed out of the house, slamming the door so hard the walls shook. He left everything behind, not even bothering to take his blood pressure medication. I didn't remind him. For years I had looked after him better than his own mother probably had. From now on, whether he lived or died was none of my business. I sat back down at the kitchen table, opened my laptop, and calmly started drafting the divorce papers. As expected, the news spread quickly to our children. Chaos erupted almost immediately. Amanda was the first to call, her voice shrill with panic. "Mom, maybe you should see a doctor. I think you're not in your right mind." Julian called next, trying to reason with me. "Mom, you're too old to be acting like a rebellious teenager." Dad didn't even do anything that bad, did he? So he praised Ruby, big deal. It's not like he humiliated you. You're over 60. If you get a divorce now, the neighbors will laugh at you. They said it all with such conviction, as if my life were just another public spectacle for them to judge. But this time, I finally understood. They have their logic. I have mine. Julian was right about one thing: I was over 60, and I refused to waste my remaining years with a man who couldn't stand the sight of me. This was about dignity, my last, non-negotiable dignity. Even when Julian resorted to threats. "Mom, if you go through with this, I'm cutting you off for good," I just replied, calmly and firmly. "Fine." On the other end of the line, the silence stretched long and heavy. Threats only work on those who care. And finally, I cared more about myself. It seemed Donald couldn't stand the thought of losing. He started dressing flashier than ever, taking Ruby out on the dance floor at the community center like they were auditioning for Dancing with the Stars. Sequined outfits, dips, twirls. They spun and bowed in front of everyone, putting on a show like they had something to prove. I sat quietly in the crowd, watching them pose and preen like mannequins in a shop window. When the music ended, a ripple of polite applause went through the room. Donald shot me a smug look, his eyes taunting, daring me to react. I didn't flinch. I simply stood up and slipped away as the crowd began to disperse. "Linda." He came trotting after me, his voice raised. "Come on, accept the olive branch. We've been together our whole lives. Do you really want a divorce? What a mess." He kept following me, babbling on and on like a broken faucet. "At your age, you really think you can start over? Just tough it out like everyone else. No marriage is perfect." I said nothing. I walked home, opened the door, and let him follow me inside, still talking. He plopped down on the sofa like he owned the place. "Get me a glass of water," he said, waving a hand as if I were still on duty. I didn't move. I just stood there, watching him coldly. No response, no service, no surrender. Not this time. I turned, walked into the living room, and tossed a stack of documents onto the coffee table. The house deed and our bank books, splitting the house and the savings. 50-50. Donald stared at them, stunned, as if they were written in a language he couldn't read. Only then did it sink in. I wasn't bluffing. I wasn't throwing a tantrum. I was done. His voice shook when he asked, "Linda, why?" I looked at him calmly, my tone even and measured. "I want to ask you the same thing. Why was it so easy for you to walk away from the woman who stood by you for 40 years, all alone in a hospital bed?" He froze, his eyes darting away from mine. "Julian and Amanda were there, weren't they? I had things to sort out, and you turned out fine in the end, right? What's the big deal?" The big deal? Of course it was a big deal. Lying there, in that sterile hospital room, not knowing if I'd make it through the night, and realizing the man I'd spent my life with had simply chosen to be somewhere else. He had chosen to dance. With someone else. While I was facing death. What if I had died that night? Would he have even noticed? Would he have cared? Why would I choose to spend the rest of my life with someone who didn't choose me when it mattered? The answer was crystal clear. If we were just two resentful people, then divorce wasn't a disaster. It was compassion. Donald's face turned red with rage. His voice cracked with fury. "Fine, divorce. But don't you come crawling back later to remarry me." I answered his outburst with a shrug, my voice light, almost amused. "Divorce it is. You think I can't live without you? Watch me." In the end, we finalized the divorce. I used my share of the savings and bought myself a cozy one-bedroom apartment just outside of downtown. It was warm, sunny, and close to everything I needed. And best of all, there was still money left in the bank. By the time Julian and Amanda found out, it was all settled. Amanda, of course, was livid. She called me in a rage and let loose. "Mom, are you insane? How could you leave Dad? He's such a good man, you're going to regret this." I smiled to myself and didn't bother to argue. Oh, and by the way, Amanda moved back in with Donald. Her excuse? She wanted Dad to enjoy some family time. I almost laughed out loud when I heard that. Meanwhile, I was too busy diving into my new life. That day, I wore a tailored blazer I had picked out myself and tucked a crisp, freshly printed diploma into my purse. I was meeting some friends for lunch to celebrate. The cafe was bathed in soft afternoon light, the sun streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows. We passed my diploma around the table like a precious relic, everyone marveling at it. "Linda, you're officially a college graduate," Diane said, her voice full of awe. "It's incredible," another said, nodding in genuine admiration. Then Susan, half joking but not entirely, sighed. "If I hadn't had to stay home and raise my younger siblings, maybe I could have gone to college too." Susan had been the smartest of us back in the day, but her family's needs had shattered her dreams before they could even bloom. I raised my coffee cup, looked around the table, and smiled. Then an idea hit me, so clear it felt like it had been waiting there all along. If I could reclaim my dream, why couldn't they? I set my cup down carefully and spoke, my voice firm and confident. "Ladies, I have a proposal." All eyes turned to me, curious. Every one of us has something unfinished inside, a dream, a passion, a little fire we never got to nurture. I want to create a mutual support group in our community, something made just for us, to help each other achieve our dreams, no matter how big or small. We don't have to wait for our children anymore. We don't need anyone's pity. We are perfectly capable of living extraordinary lives on our own terms. As I spoke, I saw something light up behind their tired eyes. A spark. Hope. Something they hadn't allowed themselves to feel in a very long time. The idea took off immediately. "I hate being home alone," one woman admitted, her eyes welling up. "I'm terrified that one day I'll fall and no one will even notice." Her kids lived out of state, too busy with their own lives to check on her. Right then and there, I got to work. I drafted a community survey with clear, simple questions. What is something you've always wanted to do? Do you have any chronic illnesses? What are your hobbies or interests? Then, I put up a banner at the community center and launched a series of free workshops, from computer skills to public speaking to even an introduction to coding. Our little community started buzzing like a weekend fair. Groups scheduled regular health check-ins. Some formed knitting clubs. Others planned weekend camping trips or scenic drives down the coast. Slowly, day by day, our lives were quietly and beautifully transforming. One afternoon, after a round of cards with the girls, we were about to call it a day when a young man stormed into the room, his face red with anger. "Mom, why didn't you make dinner?" "I'm starving." He was talking to Marcia, the quietest, kindest woman in the group, the kind who always said yes, who had spent her life never refusing a single request from her children. But this time, she snapped. "Are your hands and legs broken?" She shot back, her voice harsh. "I've been cooking for you for 30 years. Am I supposed to do it for the rest of my life? I'm your mother, not your maid." The words exploded in the room like a grenade. Her son just stood there, stunned, completely blindsided. His face went pale with embarrassment. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. And from that day on, Marcia was a woman reborn. She went to every gathering, every dance class, every event she wanted to, with no regrets. At our next card game, she was glowing. "My eldest tried to get me to babysit his son the other day," she said, rolling her eyes dramatically. "He's 35 years old, and he thinks I'm just a free, on-demand babysitter." I told him, if I help, it's out of kindness, not obligation. The best part? Ever since she stopped doing everything for them, their family relationship had actually improved. We would often see her son wandering around the community center, trying to track her down and beg her to come home for dinner. Whatever she said, he immediately agreed to, no complaints, no backtalk. We got so curious once that we asked her, "Marcia, what's your secret?" She chuckled, raised her teacup, and said with a twinkle in her eye, "They only realized how much I did when I stopped doing it." Then she paused, letting the silence deepen before reciting a line we all knew by heart. "It's not that life was quiet, it's that I was carrying everyone else's load." The room erupted in applause. Of course, not everyone was thrilled with our little senior uprising. At one of our weekend workshops, a man showed up uninvited and started ranting, pointing his finger right at me. You ladies are past your prime. Instead of fooling around, you should be at home helping your families. What kind of grandmothers are you? Before I could answer, the sisters went to war. You just want your parents to cook and clean until they drop dead, preferably after they've dug their own graves. You want your mother to crowd your space forever? Try taking care of your own wife for a change. We're over 60, not over the hill. Show me the law that says we're obligated to watch your kids. They were fast, fierce, and sharp as razors. He scurried away in minutes, with his tail between his legs. Our community wasn't a retirement group, it was a revolution. Besides travel, our favorite activity was, unsurprisingly, gossip. And the hottest gossip always came from one of our own ex-husbands and adult children. That's how I found out about Donald, from Diane, and I nearly fell out of my chair laughing. Apparently, after Amanda moved back in with her dear old dad, she tried to recreate the setup she'd grown up with, except she forgot one thing. Donald had been waited on for 40 years. He didn't even remember where the sugar was kept. In the first week, he burned 2 pots, broke the kitchen faucet, and left Amanda in tears. She tried to get him to watch Caleb. After 3 days, he was complaining about back pain and knee aches and demanded she take him to the doctor. Amanda called me, her voice exhausted and sour. Mom, I was wrong. Dad is useless. He's just a giant man-child. She paused, then added in a small voice, and Ruby? Not even close. She expected me to soften, to maybe swoop in and ease her burden. But I was packing for a 3-day, 2-night trip to Napa Valley with the girls. My voice was warm, calm, almost sweet. I've already signed up for a wine tour, Amanda. Don't bother me. I did your father's laundry for 40 years. Funny, I don't recall anyone ever offering to help me. Less than a week later, Amanda and Caleb packed their bags and moved back into her small apartment in the city. She had finally admitted defeat. One evening, we were playing poker at the community center when Diane leaned in conspiratorially. Linda, she whispered, barely containing her grin, you know what? Ever since your daughter moved out, life for Donald and Ruby has been, let's say, colorful. I put down my cards and rested my chin on my hand. I have to hear this. Diane chuckled, her face full of mischief. Well, I asked around, because I knew you'd love the dirt. Turns out Ruby, for all her charm and poise, is a clean freak. The kind of woman who has color-coded mops, one for the kitchen, one for the living room. At first, she kept everything spotless herself. But over time, even she started to get tired. She assumed Donald would be like, you get the hint, roll up his sleeves, and help out. But Donald? He just sat there on the sofa, legs crossed, yawning like a bored cat. You do you, he told her. But don't interrupt my rest. Ruby went ballistic. She threw the mop across the room. And Donald? Still acting all smug like, who else would do it but you? Don't be fooled by her soft-spoken exterior. Ruby, when pushed, has a temper sharper than a steak knife. One day she snapped. I married you to build a life together, not to be your damn maid. And with that, she slapped him right across the face. Diane reenacted the whole scene right there at the poker table, mimicking a whiny impersonation of Donald. Linda never gave me that kind of attitude. Women these days have no respect. Her performance was so perfect we laughed until we couldn't breathe. For a long time I wondered, would they be better off without me? Turns out, not even close. Karma knows how to put on a show. A few months later, Donald had a stroke. After the divorce, his routine had completely fallen apart. He stopped taking his medication, skipped meals, and kept irregular hours. It wasn't just the stroke. He was also diagnosed with diabetes. The day I heard the news, I decided to visit, not out of guilt, but out of curiosity. I wanted to see what a man looks like when no one is taking care of him. He wasn't as bad as I had been. At least he could still talk. When he saw me walk in, his eyes lit up. Linda, he said, his voice weak and shaky, thanks for coming. For an instant, he seemed small, fragile. I nodded calmly. I'm just here for a quick look. What I didn't say was, I came to see how far you've fallen. Then, suddenly, that awful, familiar smell hit me. He had soiled himself. his cheeks flushed with shame. He stared at me, silently pleading for help. I didn't move. That's when Amanda and Julian walked in. To be honest, their lives hadn't been going so well either. Amanda had recently lost her cushy office job and was now juggling part-time gigs with long hours and low pay. Julian's career had stalled after an anonymous ethics complaint, no promotions in sight. "Mom, aren't you going to take care of Dad?" Amanda asked. Julian added, "Yeah, he's not doing well. Aren't you going to help him?" I looked at them, calm and cool. "You seem to have forgotten. Donald and I are divorced." Then I paused, letting the words sink in. "And now, it's your turn to take care of him." I walked toward the door. Before I left, I looked back at Donald and said softly, as if we were just chatting about the weather, "Take care, Don. I hope they don't bring you home just to." Wait. The room fell silent. You could have heard a pin drop. Donald's face went pale. He looked at Amanda and Julian for the first time with uncertainty, maybe even fear. The two of them just stood there, awkward and speechless. And Ruby? She was across town, dancing the night away with a silver-haired gentleman who wore cologne and knew how to waltz. In my mind, I pictured it perfectly. That broken little family of three, each bitter, each resentful, each suffering in silence. And me? I was out of that mess for good. That fall, we held the first anniversary of Granny's hands at the community center. The space looked like a cozy wedding reception, flowers everywhere, candles, soft music, and the air buzzing with laughter and pride. I was invited to give a speech, looking out at the faces of my sisters strong, knowing, weathered but unbroken, I felt grounded in a way I never had before. I started slowly, my voice steady. I am so grateful for my late life rebellion. For decades, I was told what I should and shouldn't do. Every "I'm telling you this for your own good" really meant, this is what works best for me. But one day, I realized something important. We have lived for everyone else, husbands, children, parents, since we were barely adults, and not once did we stop to ask, what do I want? There is no law that says we have to hand over the rest of our lives to anyone. Our biggest responsibility now is to take care of ourselves. So yes, if that makes me a rebel, so be it. If that means I get to live on my own terms, then it's worth it. I paused, then smiled wide. So, ladies, let's rebel together. The room erupted in thunderous applause. And just like that, my story came to an end.